Hi guys, so this is my cartoon that I chose to analyze for this specific assignment, and it's also one that I focus a lot on in my research paper. So I first wanted to just explain how I found this, and so through a lot of my research, I kept coming across studies that were analyzing the effects of humor in political cartoons and just the symbols that come up repeatedly, and a lot of those sources, which I found on reliable databases, all reference this website, which is Kaggle Cartoons. And so I decided to check it out, and at first I was a little bit suspicious that it was a .com, but since we read recently in So What that just because something's a .com doesn't mean that it's not reliable, and just because something's in edu doesn't mean that it is reliable. So I decided to look through, and I ended up finding a lot of cartoons that I could use. And this one struck me particularly because it isn't that common to have, in a political cartoon, to have both candidates presented in a negative way. And so the first thing that I noticed about this one was, so they're set up in a debate setting, and debates are usually, especially presidential debates, are very civil and respectable events with a lot of meaning to them, and it just really shows how intellectual and just what the candidates' goals are. And so that's definitely interesting because they're obviously sitting in trash cans surrounded by trash. So that's the next thing I noticed, that it's both of them sit on platforms of garbage, and they're surrounded by it, and they don't even notice. They're not even concerned about all the trash around them. And you can see here there's the scent of the trash coming up, and neither of them even acknowledge that that's going on, which is an important thing to note. And then the next thing that I really looked at was their the vocalization that's going on. So Trump is the one speaking in this, and he's doing his stereotypical aggressive finger point, and his mouth is very exaggerated, and so it just really looks like he's the dominant one vocally. And even though so I think that the cartoonist was trying to say that he looks a little bit ridiculous, so what he's saying is ridiculous, I mean, in the cartoonist's opinion, but he's being very vocal about it, whereas Hillary isn't saying anything. And so then the next thing that I was looking at was her facial expression, because she looks as if she's trying to ignore what he's saying, she doesn't even want to concern herself with it. But at the same time, the way that her eyebrows look, she looks angry, so it is portraying in a way that she's trying to ignore what he's saying, but it is getting to her. It's also very interesting for in a debate for a candidate to appear so uninterested, because this is when they're trying to convince the public of why they should be president. So I just think it's interesting that he chose to show her in a way that she was just not interested in the scenario. And it's also interesting to me their body language. So Trump is coming out of his trash can, whereas Hillary is closed off and just staying in it. So I was thinking that maybe Kaggle was trying to say that even though both of these candidates are not great and not super reliable, Trump is at least more out there about it, whereas Hillary tries to remain more closed off and reserved about maybe her opinions. And then also I found it interesting that they're both looking at each other, and they're not I was looking at images of real political debates, and often the candidates are looking at the audience or making gestures, but the two of them are only looking at each other. So I thought that could mean that Kaggle was trying to say that they aren't as focused on like the public opinion or what the public wants. It's more about their own agenda. And then, so going back to the fact that like both of them are here, I feel like is a reflection of like not only just Kegel's opinion, but the sentiments of the entire country. I mean, of course, both Trump and Hillary had very strong supporters, but I think that this election was very unique in the fact that there was a large majority of people who felt that neither candidate was someone that they could really like strongly stand behind. And so this is just like representing that in an image. And a lot of my research paper focuses on how political cartoons have the ability to reflect how the public is feeling, because the reason that political cartoons like do well is because people relate to them. Like if no one felt this way, like it wouldn't matter. Like a cartoonist's job is to create images that people can see and like resonate with. And so the reason that I feel Kegel would make an image like this is because people in the future might look back on this time period and think that it was like an uber conservative time and like very right wing because Trump was elected. Because I feel like we look back on different time periods and like based on who was president, we make a decision of like whether it was like more liberal or conservative. And so I don't really feel that this time period is actually very conservative, despite the fact that he's our president. I think that there's a lot of like social progression going on, and cartoons like this are so important because they represent how the public was feeling. So it's maybe like, yes, he became president, and maybe Kegel is saying like maybe it's because he was more vocal, but it's important for like people to know that people were very split on this situation. And one of the articles that I read said that like cartoons have a way of characterizing an entire national identity. And I think that that's really like what this is, because people were faced with an option that wasn't necessarily like what they would have hoped for, because in elections usually like it's not two candidates that are like just really not even supported mainly by their own party. So that was just like a really polarizing situation for our country. And it's just really important to have images like this that people can relate to, that and then in the future look back on. So I think that's about it for this. So yeah, thank you.